Don't talk, the ragged mountain man whispered urgently to the trembling woman, as gunshots echoed through the dusty street, pulling her behind wooden crates while his loyal dog circled protectively. Townsfolk scurry past the bearded vagrant daily, their sneers painting him a mad hermit, destined for an unmarked grave in the desert wasteland. What they cannot fathom is that this broken drifter harbors secrets that could topple their entire world. The determined school teacher represents everything he once cherished: knowledge, hope, dignity, before witnessing something that shattered his voice and scattered his sanity to the wind. Now her crusade to educate the forgotten threatens to expose the same corruption that destroyed him, drawing deadly attention from those who silence inconvenient truths permanently. As bullets fly and conspiracies unravel, their fates intertwine around one devastating reality. The evidence he's been gathering could save her mission, or doom them both. Will his enforced silence become her salvation, or will speaking the truth prove fatal for everything they hold sacred? Before we continue, comment where you are tuning in from. Perhaps we will publish a story there. The autumn sun cast long shadows across Clearwater Springs as dust devils danced between weathered storefronts. Citizens hurried past the figure hunched against the general store wall, their eyes deliberately avoiding the tattered coat and wild beard. The man they called Mad Zeke sat motionless with his mongrel dog, Tommy, pressed against his leg. Sheriff Clayton Booth emerged from his office, badge glinting as he surveyed his domain. His cold eyes lingered on the vagrant, before moving to more pressing matters. 3 of his deputies flanked him, hands resting casually on their gun belts. Zeke watched through matted hair as the lawmen dispersed. His fingers traced patterns in the dirt, meaningless scribbles to passing observers. Tommy's ears twitched at distant sounds only he could hear. Across town, Mercy Washington swept the floor, spine straightened. Just basic schooling, nothing more. Sheriff wants to be sure. These are delicate times. Can't have troublemakers stirring up problems. The deputies spread out, examining her simple classroom. One knocked over a stack of books. Another kicked at a crate desk. "Seems harmless enough," Kane said finally, "but keep it that way. Wouldn't want accidents to happen." They filed out, leaving Mercy alone, with scattered supplies and a clear message. She knelt to gather the fallen books, hands trembling slightly. Evening approached as Zeke emerged from his hiding spot near the old cemetery. Tommy trotted beside him, nose working the air for interesting scents. They moved through back alleys and forgotten paths, invisible to decent folk. His destination lay hidden in the canyon walls outside town. The cave mouth opened barely wide enough for a man, concealed by desert brush and fallen rocks. Inside, oil lamps revealed a different world entirely. Books lined crude shelves, carved into stone walls. Maps covered every surface, marked with symbols and notations. A desk, fashioned from driftwood, held journals filled with careful observations. This sanctuary preserved everything Ezekiel Morrison had been before his world collapsed. 2 years had passed since that terrible night. 2 years since he witnessed Sheriff Booth drag Federal Inspector Davies behind the livery stable. 2 years since Booth's men found him hiding in the shadows. The beating had been thorough, but silent, professional. They damaged his throat carefully, leaving him able to whisper, but never shout, never testify clearly in court, never be believed over a respected lawman's word. So Professor Morrison died that night, and Mad Zeke was born. He opened his latest journal, documenting the day's observations. Booths meeting with railroad representatives. Strange surveying equipment glimpsed near the eastern hills. In their numbers. Mercy backed toward the creek, mind racing through limited options. Running meant leaving her students defenseless tomorrow. Standing meant facing whatever they planned. Please, I'm just teaching children to read. You're teaching them ideas above their station. The first man lunged forward. Mercy dodged but stumbled on loose rocks. They circled closer, emboldened by her apparent helplessness. Then shadows moved behind them. A low growl froze the attackers mid-step. Tommy emerged from the darkness, hackles raised. Behind him came a figure they recognized but dismissed. Mad Zeke stepped into the moonlight, empty hands raised peacefully. The attackers laughed at this unexpected intervention. Their laughter died as Zeke moved. He flowed between them like water, using their momentum against them. No punches thrown, just redirected energy and perfectly timed pushes. Within seconds, all three lay groaning in the creek mud. Zeke helped Mercy to her feet, his touch gentle but sure. She stared at him in wonder, seeing intelligence burning in eyes she had thought empty. He leaned close, voice barely audible. Don't talk about this. Trust me. Then he melted back into darkness with Tommy, leaving Mercy alone with unconscious attackers and impossible questions. Dawn broke over Clearwater Springs as Mercy swept her schoolhouse steps. Her hands shook slightly, memories of the previous night flooding back. The vagrant's impossible grace. His whispered warning. The intelligence burning behind supposed madness. She had left food by the general store where he usually sat. Bread, dried meat, water. A small gesture that felt inadequate after what he had done. Students began arriving as morning light strengthened. Young faces eager for knowledge despite the dangers their education posed. Mercy forced herself to focus on their lessons, pushing aside questions that demanded answers. Meanwhile, Zeke observed from his usual spot against the store wall. Tommy dozed beside him. Letter. That evening, she quietly distributed books among her students' families. When questioned, she claimed concern about winter moisture damage. The children accepted her explanation without suspicion. Friday night arrived with unusual quiet. Mercy positioned herself in the abandoned church bell tower, watching her schoolhouse through cracked windows. If the warning proved accurate, she needed evidence. Near midnight, 3 figures approached the barn. They carried torches and determination. Mercy recognized Deputy Kane's swagger, even in darkness. The flames caught quickly on dry wood and hay. Orange light painted the desert as months of work transformed into smoke and ash. Mercy bit back tears, watching her dreams burn. A soft footstep made her turn. Zeke stood in the shadows, Tommy at his side. He had climbed the bell tower silently, moving like a man half his apparent age. He pressed a folded paper into her hands before disappearing again. By the time she looked up from reading, he had vanished. The note contained detailed maps of the area surrounding town. Red X marks indicated mineral deposits. Blue lines showed proposed railroad routes. Green circles marked properties under pressure from mysterious buyers. At the bottom, careful handwriting explained everything. Professor Ezekiel Morrison, University of Colorado. Geological Survey, 1885. Federal Inspector Davies murdered for this information. Sheriff Booth involved in land grab conspiracy. Mercy stared at the signature until the letters blurred. The vagrant everyone dismissed possessed knowledge that could transform their community. His silence protected secrets that powerful men would kill to suppress. The next morning brought Sheriff Booth to investigate the fire. He questioned Mercy with theatrical concern while his deputies searched the ruins. Their performance convinced no one who mattered. "Terrible shame," Booth said, hat held respectfully. "Probably careless with a lantern. These old buildings catch easy. Someone set this fire deliberately. Now why damaged my voice box? He whispered finally. Made sure I could never testify clearly. Court would dismiss my testimony as the ravings of a broken man. So you became invisible instead. Invisible and forgotten. Perfect for gathering evidence. Mercy understood the genius of his strategy. Who notices a vagrant? Who listens to a madman's ramblings? He could observe everything while appearing to see nothing. The mineral deposits, she said. That's what this is really about. Silver veins run through the eastern hills. Enough wealth to buy senators and judges. Booth clears the land while railroad investors wait for the perfect moment to purchase. How many people know, besides us? Maybe 3 men in Denver. They hired me for the original survey, then tried to bury the results when Inspector Davies started asking questions. Mercy absorbed this information slowly. Her students' families lived on some of those marked properties. Their small farms and modest homes sat atop fortunes they would never see. We have to stop them. We have to survive them first. Zeke rose carefully, Tommy following his lead. Before walking away, he pressed another folded paper into Mercy's palm. This note contained a simple address and meeting time. Tomorrow at sunset. The old mine shaft north of town. Finally, after 2 years of silence, Professor Morrison was ready to speak. The abandoned mine shaft stood like a wound in the desert hillside. Mercy approached carefully as sunset painted the rocks crimson. Her footsteps echoed in the growing darkness until a familiar silhouette emerged from the shadows. Zeke waited, with Tommy beside him, both alert to every sound. He gestured for silence and led her deeper into the mine tunnel. Oil lamps flickered to life, revealing a hidden chamber that took her breath away. Maps covered every surface, detailed surveys, geological charts, population records. String connected photographs to newspaper clippings to hand-drawn diagrams. 2 years of careful investigation sprawled, echoed off stone walls. His deputies spread out, boots crunching on loose gravel. Mercy pressed against the wall, heart hammering as lantern light swept past their hiding spot. Zeke moved silently toward a narrow passage she had not noticed before. He guided her through the opening, just as footsteps approached their chamber. They crawled through darkness until emerging in a natural cave system behind the mine. "How did you know about the back entrance?" Mercy whispered. "I mapped these caves during my original survey. The geology here is more complex than most people realize." They waited in the desert night until the search party departed. Booth's frustrated cursing carried clearly on the wind. Their hiding place remained secure, but the net was closing. Back in the evidence chamber, Zeke lit a single lamp and pulled out his most recent discoveries. Railroad company documents, obtained from a sympathetic clerk in Denver. Corporate correspondence detailing the mineral extraction timeline. They plan to file claims on the eastern properties within 6 months, he explained. Every family living there will be evicted under eminent domain laws. Including my students' families. Including everyone who cannot afford lawyers and politicians. Mercy studied the projected railroad route. It would slice directly through the heart of their community, destroying homes and livelihoods. The mineral wealth beneath their feet would enrich distant investors, while local families scattered to the winds. "We need help. Someone with authority to challenge Booth directly. I have contacts in the territorial government, men who knew me before the attack, but reaching them requires careful planning." Zeke opened a leather portfolio containing official correspondence, letters from university colleagues, geological societies, federal survey departments, evidence of his legitimate credentials and reputation. Professor Morrison published papers in 3 scientific journals, he said. His research on Western mineral deposits was considered groundbreaking. That expertise makes me dangerous to their operation. Messages. Zeke frowned, studying his timeline charts. Too soon. My letters only went out last week. Something else is happening. Chen shifted nervously. There's more. Booth sent telegrams to Denver today. Mentioned your name specifically, Professor. Called you a dangerous fugitive. The implications hit them simultaneously. If Booth knew Morrison was alive and active, the careful game of shadows was over. Federal marshals would arrive expecting to arrest a wanted man, not investigate local corruption. They're turning the law against us, Mercy realized, making you the criminal instead of the witness. Classic strategy. Discredit the evidence by destroying the witness. Zeke began gathering his most essential documents. The complete investigation would have to remain hidden, but key evidence needed protection. He sorted papers with practiced efficiency, 2 years of preparation guiding his choices. I need to contact my allies before the marshals arrive, he decided. Chen, can you send telegrams without Booth's knowledge? The equipment stays locked at night, but I have keys. What messages? 3 telegrams to Denver. Tell them Professor Morrison has evidence of federal inspector's murder and corporate conspiracy. Request immediate territorial investigation. Chen memorized the recipients and departed quickly. Time was running short, and their window of opportunity was closing. Mercy helped pack the essential evidence into leather satchels. Maps, photographs, correspondence, geological surveys. Everything that proved the conspiracy's scope and the professor's credibility. What happens when the marshals arrive tomorrow? She asked. Depends whether they're honest lawmen or more corporate enforcers. And if they're working for the railroad? Zeke met her eyes in the lamplight. Then we become fugitives fighting for our lives. Outside the mine, coyotes howled in the distance, while stars wheeled overhead. Tomorrow would bring answers, but tonight held only a concerned public servant dealing with dangerous criminals. Gentlemen, welcome to Clearwater Springs, Booth said with theatrical warmth. We're grateful for federal assistance with our fugitive problem. Tell us about Professor Morrison, Fletcher replied. Your telegram suggested he might be involved in the inspector's disappearance. Ezekiel Morrison went mad after losing his university position. Been living as a vagrant, spreading wild stories about conspiracies and mineral deposits. Locals call him Mad Zeke. Cross made careful notes in a leather journal. Witnesses to his erratic behavior? Dozens. The man's clearly unhinged, but dangerous too. We believe he may have killed Inspector Davies to cover up geological survey fraud. Zeke lowered his field glasses, understanding the trap's elegant construction. Booth was framing him for Davies' murder, while discrediting his evidence as insane ramblings. The marshals would arrest a mad vagrant, not investigate a decorated professor's claims. The federal men established themselves at the hotel, while Booth provided files documenting Morrison's alleged crimes. False witness statements, forged evidence, manufactured timelines. 2 years of preparation had gone into this frame job. That evening, Mercy met Zeke at their predetermined location near Miller's Creek. Tommy sensed the tension, staying close to his master's side. The situation was deteriorating rapidly. They're not real marshals, Zeke whispered. Federal law enforcement doesn't operate this way. How can you tell? Their questions focus on Professor Morrison specifically, not the inspector's disappearance generally. They already know what story they want to hear. Mercy studied his face in the moonlight. 2 years of constant vigilance had taken their toll, but his mind remained sharp. What do we do? Test them. See how they react to information that contradicts their narrative. The next morning brought unexpected visitors to Mercy's makeshift classroom. His usual haunts. Instead, He moved through the town's hidden spaces, gathering intelligence on the fake marshals. Their hotel rooms contained railroad company correspondence. Their saddlebags held corporate payment vouchers. Their weapons were military-grade, not standard law enforcement issue. Chen provided the final confirmation. Telegraph records showed the marshals' credentials had never been verified through proper federal channels. They were sophisticated imposters, but imposters nonetheless. The realization changed everything. If the railroad company could deploy fake federal agents, their conspiracy reached far beyond Clearwater Springs. Corporate influence had corrupted multiple levels of government, making legitimate legal channels unreliable. Zeke met with Samuel Chen and 3 other trusted allies in the old cemetery at midnight. Japanese immigrant Kenji Nakamura brought information from the railroad work camps. Former slave Marcus Freeman reported unusual activity around the eastern properties. Irish immigrant Patrick O'Malley shared gossip from the saloons where loose tongues revealed corporate plans. The fake marshals plan to arrest Morrison tomorrow, Chen reported. Booth setting up a public spectacle to discourage other troublemakers. They need the professor dead or discredited before the mineral claims are filed, Kenji added. Too much money at stake to allow witnesses. Freeman nodded grimly. My family's farm sits right over the richest silver vein. They'll take our land one way or another. Zeke studied his allies in the moonlight. Immigrants and minorities, dismissed by mainstream society but united by shared persecution. They understood the stakes better than anyone. We have 2 choices, he whispered. Run or fight. Running just delays the inevitable, O'Malley said quietly. They'll destroy this community whether we're here or not. Fighting means exposing ourselves to greater danger. We're already in danger, Mercy pointed out. At least fighting gives us some control. Tommy whined softly, sensing the group's different about these men. The fake marshals Fletcher and Cross stood waiting in the town square with Sheriff Booth. Their confident postures suggested everything was proceeding according to plan. The trap was set, the victim cornered, and official sanction would legitimize whatever came next. But the approaching riders carried themselves with genuine authority. Their horses showed signs of hard travel, their gear bore the wear of actual fieldwork, and their formation spoke of military discipline rather than corporate theater. The lead rider dismounted first, Captain William Hayes, his badge reading, U.S. Marshal, Colorado Territory. Behind him came 5 deputies, each carrying properly documented federal credentials. Chen's desperate telegrams had reached the right people after all. Marshal Fletcher? Hayes approached the impostors with professional courtesy. I'm Captain Hayes, Territorial Headquarters. Received some concerning reports about activities in this jurisdiction. Fletcher's confidence wavered slightly. Captain Hayes, we weren't expecting territorial involvement. Funny thing about that, we have no record of Marshals Fletcher and Cross being assigned to this district. The confrontation Zeke had orchestrated was beginning. From his hidden position in the bell tower, he could see Booth's face pale as the situation slipped beyond his control. The sheriff had not expected real federal agents to arrive. Cross stepped forward aggressively. Our credentials are in order. This is a sensitive investigation requiring discretion. I'm sure it is. Hayes gestured to his deputies. Mind if we verify those credentials through proper channels? The fake marshals exchanged glances loaded with meaning. Their carefully constructed deception was unraveling in public view. Townspeople gathered to watch the unusual spectacle of federal agents questioning other federal agents. Mercy positioned herself near the crowd, ready to act when Zeke gave the signal. Their allies spread throughout the square, each carrying specific pieces of evidence to present at the crucial moment. The timing had addressed the gathering crowd. Is Professor Morrison present? We'd like to hear his testimony directly. This was the moment of truth. Zeke had spent 2 years hiding in plain sight, but now survival demanded exposure. He stepped from the crowd, Tommy at his side, no longer the dismissed vagrant, but a man reclaiming his identity. "Captain Hayes," he said, his whisper carrying clearly in the sudden silence. "Professor Ezekiel Morrison, University of Colorado." The transformation was remarkable. Posture straightened, intelligence blazed in his eyes, and 2 years of careful observation crystallized into authoritative presence. The crowd murmured in recognition and disbelief. Fletcher reached for his weapon, but Hayes was faster. "I wouldn't recommend that course of action." The fake marshals found themselves surrounded by real federal deputies. Their corporate masquerade had collapsed, revealing them as the railroad company enforcers Zeke had suspected from the beginning. "Sheriff Booth," Hayes continued, "you're under arrest for conspiracy, murder, and impersonating federal officers." "This is ridiculous," Booth sputtered. "These men presented proper credentials, forged credentials, provided by the Denver Pacific Railroad Company." Hayes held up intercepted correspondence. "We've been investigating corporate influence in territorial affairs for months." Mercy stepped forward with the evidence portfolio she and Zeke had prepared. Maps, surveys, photographs, and financial records documenting the entire conspiracy. 2 years of patient investigation presented in overwhelming detail. "Professor Morrison preserved Inspector Davies's original investigation," she announced. "Every claim, every piece of evidence, every connection between corporate interests and local corruption." Hayes examined the documents with growing amazement. "This is extraordinary work, Professor. The territorial governor will want to review this immediately." The fake marshals made their move, Russia exposed just in time. "Professor Morrison," Hayes said formally, "the territorial government owes you a significant debt. Your courage and dedication have prevented a massive injustice." Zeke looked around at the faces surrounding him. Mercy beamed with pride. Tommy wagged enthusiastically. His immigrant allies nodded with satisfaction. Even former skeptics regarded him with newfound respect. 2 years of silence were ending, but the work of rebuilding was just beginning. 1 year later, the morning sun cast golden light across the rebuilt schoolhouse as children's laughter echoed through open windows. The structure stood twice as large as Mercy's original barn, funded by the territorial government's reparations program for conspiracy victims. Professor Ezekiel Morrison stood at the front of the classroom, his voice still a whisper, but carrying clearly to every student. Mercy sat nearby, ready to amplify his words when needed, though the children had learned to listen carefully to their soft-spoken teacher. "Today we study geology," Zeke said, holding up samples of silver ore. "The rocks beneath our feet tell stories of ancient seas and buried treasures." 8-year-old Sarah Freeman raised her hand eagerly. "Professor Morrison, is it true you found silver under our farm? Your family's land sits above one of the richest deposits in the territory. That wealth belongs to your community now, not distant corporations." The mineral rights settlement had transformed Clearwater Springs from a struggling frontier town into a prosperous community. Federal courts had awarded extraction rights directly to affected families, ensuring local ownership of their underground treasures. Tommy dozed in his favorite spot by the window, gray muzzle resting on crossed paws. The old dog had become the school's beloved mascot, greeting students each morning and providing comfort during difficult lessons. Captain Hayes arrived during the lunch break, his monthly visits now focused on progress rather than investigation. The territorial government maintained active smiled at this recognition. Their experiment in inclusive education was succeeding beyond expectations. Former slave children learned alongside immigrants' offspring, breaking down barriers that had divided the community. The afternoon brought visitors from Denver, railroad officials, but legitimate ones this time, seeking community partnership rather than exploitation. The Mineral Extraction Cooperative would begin operations next spring under strict environmental guidelines. "Professor Morrison," the lead negotiator said respectfully, "your geological expertise is invaluable for sustainable mining practices. The cooperative board hopes you'll serve as chief consultant. My teaching duties come first, but I can provide technical guidance when needed." The negotiation proceeded smoothly, reflecting the community's new position of strength. They controlled the resources now, setting terms that protected both environment and residents' interests. Evening found Zeke and Mercy walking through town, observing changes that still amazed them both. New businesses lined the main street. Families that had fled during Booth's reign were returning. The atmosphere hummed with optimism and possibility. They paused at the cemetery where Inspector Davies now rested beneath a proper headstone. The federal government had honored him posthumously, acknowledging his sacrifice in the fight against corruption. "He would be proud of what we accomplished," Mercy said quietly. "Justice delayed but not denied," Zeke whispered. Tommy trotted ahead, his steps slower than before but his spirit unchanged. The dog had been Zeke's anchor during the darkest times, providing loyalty when human companionship seemed impossible. At the memorial dedication 6 months earlier, Zeke had addressed the crowd in his characteristic whisper, while Mercy translated his words to the gathering. His speech about overlooked heroes and the power of persistence had moved many to tears. "Sometimes the most important truths are spoken softly," he had said. "You just have to listen." Those words now adorned the school's entrance, carved into oak with the federal investigation. His cowardice during Booth's reign had been forgiven in light of his efforts toward redemption and reform. After the meeting, Zeke returned to his modest home near the school. The territorial government had provided housing for conspiracy victims, allowing him to live with dignity rather than hiding in caves and shadows. His study contained the geological surveys and research notes that had started everything. But now they served education rather than evidence, teaching students about the land they called home. A knock at the door brought Samuel Chen with the evening mail. The telegraph operator had become postmaster as well, his reliability earning community trust and steady employment. "Letter from the university, Professor. Looks official." The University of Colorado was offering him a full professorship with tenure, recognizing his contributions to geological science and community service. The position would restore his academic reputation while allowing continued residence in Clearwater Springs. Zeke set the letter aside to consider later. His calling now lay in teaching children who might never attend university, but deserved knowledge nonetheless. Sometimes, the greatest impact came through quiet service, rather than prestigious positions. As night settled over the desert, coyotes called in the distance, while families gathered around dinner tables in homes that were finally secure. The community that had nearly been destroyed by greed had emerged stronger, wiser, and more united than ever before. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and opportunities, but tonight offered the peaceful satisfaction of justice served and futures secured.